everyone, Victor Tantic here, and welcome to the Reddit Railway. Today's destination is r/EntitledPeople, which are the third and fourth parts to these videos. If you want to watch parts 1 and 2, you'll find the links in the description. Otherwise, all aboard! Before I begin, those of you saying I should get cameras, I will as soon as I can afford it. I'm still financially recovering from buying the house. And to those of you who said I should have had Dan and sister-in-law arrested, the only reason I didn't was because their kids need them. Not to mention Dan would likely lose his job, and since he's the sole breadwinner of his family, I couldn't do that to them. You don't need to send people to jail to get revenge. I got mine without filing a police report. However, I wouldn't be so merciful again, and they know it. Anyway, I invited my extended family to my place on Christmas Eve. All of them came, even though it was a fairly long drive. I was really happy they did, especially when they said they wanted to support me. I received a lot of praise for how hard I had worked to get a house on my own. About 2 hours after the party started, guess who showed up? My parents, brother, sister-in-law, and their kids. They didn't even knock. They just walked in, even though I hadn't invited them. I told them to leave immediately. They begged to stay and said they brought gifts. One of my uncles stood up and yelled at them before I could speak. He said they don't deserve to be in my house or my life after everything they've pulled. Mind you, this guy is my mother's brother. He used to love her to pieces until he found out what really went down between us. My maternal grandparents scolded my parents, saying how disappointed they were in them. Other family members joined in. After ripping my parents a new one, they turned their ire on Dan and sister-in-law. Sister-in-law went back to her old standard of crying. She said they should be the ones living here, not me. She plopped down in a chair to have a tantrum, whining about how it wasn't fair. She just wanted to live in a better place and feel like a real mum. It was petty of me, but I said she sucks as a mother because she lets mine do most of the parenting while she sits on her butt all day, drinking, playing on her phone, or spending all of Dan's money. I even joked that she drinks so much booze, I'm surprised her baby doesn't get drunk after breastfeeding. Sister-in-law asked if I was calling her a bad mum. I said the evidence speaks for itself before adding, if you want a place like mine, how about you put your college degree to good use and actually get a job? Then her eldest ran up to start kicking and screaming at me for yelling at his mum. He kept saying I was the bad guy for not letting them live here. My brother grabbed his son and pulled him away. Suddenly, the party turned into an intervention against my sister-in-law and brother. She was crying, her new baby was crying, her kids were crying. Hell, even Dan was close to crying. He just sat down and took the verbal abuse. He couldn't look anyone in the eye or say anything. He was a total wreck by the end. He, sister-in-law, their kids and my parents left in defeat. The party resumed and we didn't talk about what had happened for the rest of the night. Everyone complimented me for being a great host, saying I was better than my parents. After Christmas, sister-in-law stopped making posts that were obvious digs at me. She also deleted all of the old ones, but shortly after the new year, she made a new post complaining about how she had tried and failed to convince my parents to get a camper like I did. She had suggested they live in the backyard while they had the house. Oh, the irony. My parents turned that idea down, vehemently I hear. No one is going to push them out of their home, let alone their master bedroom. The post was only up for a couple of days before sister-in-law removed it. She has hardly posted anything since. I guess she now realizes nobody is listening to her anymore. Yep, totally knew they'd show up for Christmas unannounced. But I have to wonder how they got inside this time. Did OP leave his front door unlocked, or did the family bring another drill? Either way, it sounds like they were thoroughly humiliated by the rest of the family, which was very satisfying. I still reckon OP should have pressed charges against his brother and sister-in-law, regardless of what it would do to the kids. If anything, they'd probably be better off without such rotten parents. There is one more update, so let's see if something happened to warrant that. My parents recently got in touch, asking if we could meet in a public place of my choosing. I smelt a trap, but wasn't scared. In fact, I was amused. They know I'm not to be fucked with anymore. I picked a local restaurant and went in. Dan was there, but kept his mouth shut most of the time. After some awkward small talk, I asked them what they wanted. My parents begged me to help Dan get his own apartment so he can finally move out. Apparently, Dan's credit isn't so great, which isn't a shocker. Like I said, he's the breadwinner for his family, and his wife spends everything he makes. They asked if I could give him money or co-sign an apartment with him. I said no to both options. That's when Dan yelled at me that I have so much more because I don't have a family of my own, blah blah blah. I started reminding all of them about everything they did to me. My mother grabbed my hand and begged me not to bring any of that up. My father and Dan both just looked away. I'm pretty sure they wanted to say something, but held their tongues. I asked them if they thought I was rich or something. They said yes. And when I told them I don't have that kind of money, they looked at me like a deer in headlights. I broke down my entire financial situation, and it became obvious why I couldn't help out. Not that I would have. My mother started crying again, but I didn't care. I told them I'm not an ATM, and I'm not a fool. I expected my father to get angry like he always does, but he didn't. I've known this man to explode at me over the slightest provocation, namely when I didn't help enable my brother. But this time, he stayed quiet. There wasn't even a sneer on his face. The only way I could describe the look he had was regret and defeat. Maybe regret for being a shitty parent, or maybe regret because he can't bully me anymore. Who knows? Either way, my parents couldn't really argue with me. Lunch arrived and we mostly ate in silence. Afterwards, we parted ways. As for sister-in-law, she's continually complaining about my parents online. She really doesn't seem to like the fact she isn't the queen bee of their house, and I think her toxic behavior is finally getting to them. Why else would they be so desperate to come crawling back to me? Sister-in-law keeps suggesting they move into a camper, and they keep telling her no. She does seem to have a following of Karen-minded people, though. Every now and then, I get messages from people raging at me for not giving up my house. I don't bother arguing with these people. I just block them and move on. There was one persistent troll who had my phone number. They said I should leave my house to make room for a real family man like Dan. This stopped after I told the troll they were just amusing me. Since then, I haven't heard anything from any of them. Okay, this wasn't as dramatic as the other posts, which suits me just fine. I'm sure OP is grateful too. But the bloody nerve of these people. They treat him like shit for years and then have the nerve to ask for money? I thought OP was making a mistake by sharing his financial situation, but now I see how smart that was. If he hadn't told them, they might have kept thinking he was flush. Not that it would have mattered even if he was. He is under no obligation to help his family, and he shouldn't. Let them all rot under the same roof. They deserve it. This was the most recent post OP made, but I get the feeling it won't be the last. If he makes another, you can be sure I'll be covering it. And with that, I'll end the video here. Like, share, and subscribe, and drop a comment down below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.